This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
So joining us today is Morgan.
Hi, Morgan.
Podcast of the Dragon is in the house. Welcome back. So glad to have you.
As always.
Hi. How's it going?
Well, we've got you on the podcast, so it is a good day.
Yeah, so we're
the audience
excited.
Is happy. We're happy. It's all good.
Hopefully my audio is better this time. If it's not, I'll know that I definitely need to get a new microphone.
It sounds pretty choppy on Zoom.
Oh, great. Sorry about that.
Just FYI. But yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, other fun news. This is one day after the first episode of Hot Nuance went live.
Yes. All right. Tell me about Hot Nuance.
So Hot Nuance is a podcast where a screenwriter, a novelist, and a podcaster walk into a book, delving into its craft and impact on their lives and all of the nuance therein. And the podcaster in question is myself, the screenwriter is Allie from Wheel Takes, and the novelist is Bree of Kit Rocha. And we're reading Exiles, The Ruins of Ombre by Melanie Ron, which was published in 1994, and we are contrasting it with our experiences of fantasy literature in general and Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time in particular. And you can find us at Hot Nuance Book Club on any podcast or at our awesome website that Brie built. And yeah, our logo is very purple, so you can't miss it.
That sounds dope.
It does. It sounds like an awesome time.
It's very fun. Our first episode dropped yesterday, and we've already recorded 3. And we'll be recording our 4th one tomorrow on Wednesday, so we should be able to maintain a nice steady output right from the get-go. Bree has a great marketing mind, so between my organization and her experience, we're managing to get this thing going. So yeah, hope everyone can come check it out and see if they like it, because, you know, it's very fun to record.
The expansion of the Fox and Raven Media podcast empire continues.
I'm trying. Fox and Raven Media is a thing that's happening. I'm attempting to figure out how one builds a website, but that is currently just how one engenders a panic attack. That's as far as I've gotten. So stay tuned for that.
Do not go to foxandravenmedia.com. It's not ready yet. Unless you're listening to this in the future. And then, you know, maybe check it out. And if it still says under construction, yeah, sorry.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. At some point, you will be listening to this from far enough away from the recording of it that, yeah, my panic attacks will be a thing of the past. But for now, they are very real.
Hey, I've got a new drug that'll knock you out if you start having panic attacks. Knock me out.
I have podcasts to record. I hear these drugs are bad for that.
It wasn't great. It wasn't great. Yeah, we definitely missed an episode because of those.
Yeah. Oh, that episode comes out in 2 days. No one else knows what we're talking about.
It's like Trazodone.
I'd have to go look at the name of it. I don't even remember. It's, you know, but it's an elephant tranquilizer.
Yeah.
At least that's what it felt like.
I had a doctor offer me that. I was like, I've had it once, and it felt like being dragged through a knothole backwards into sleep. It was terrible. Effective, but terrible.
That's an accurate description. Yes. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, bye. See you all later. All right. So we have a long ass chapter to get into. Let's see if we can start only half an hour late instead of the full hour that we usually do.
Yeah, today we're covering Elenia Sarand as well as Daved Hanlon. So, yeah, everyone make sure you've got a water bottle that's fully stocked and a nice blankie, because we're going to be here for a while.
Well, you know, there's a lot of text in this chapter, and certainly a lot of characters. I'm not sure how much there is, not how much it is, but how deep we want to get into some of these characters and where they end up and stuff like that.
There wasn't actually a lot that I found in my research.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Are we going to read the intro and then, like, go into it, or?
Oh, right. We're getting near the end of the cleansing, and I mean, this chapter in Winter's Heart is the end of the cleansing. Again, it's the end of that day. But you are right. We should return to the cleansing.
Shall we return
first
to Winter's Heart?
This is going to be a long enough recording. We should get this out of the way while we still have brain
I
cells.
think that's better.
Yeah, agreed.
Tidal waves of taint. That's what this section is.
Ew.
Thanks for that, JediPants. In addition to the episode artwork, we also have that lovely line.
Oh, God. Inside his head, Rand was screaming. He was sure that he was screaming, that Leah Theron was screaming, but he could not hear either voice in the roar. The foul ocean of the taint was flooding through him, howling with its speed. Tidal waves of vileness crashed over him. Raging gales of filth ripped at him. The only reason he knew that he still held the power was the taint. saidin could be shifting, flaring, about to kill him, and he would never know. The putrid flood overwhelmed everything else, and he hung on by his fingernails to keep from being swept away on it. The taint was moving. That was all that counted now. He had to hold on. So, the taint was moving. Yeah, I gotta hold on. It's, I mean, he got down on there in the Dark One's taint. It's...
Undulating.
Yeah.
Undulating taint? Something happens when you're like riding a horse, is like your taint undulates.
Indeed.
Only if you're holding the one power. The male one power. So in the actual canon of the series, right? So what's happening here, right? He's been holding on to this all day, and he's basically been starting a siphon. And finally, he's not just holding on to saidin. The taint itself is actually being pulled into Shadar Logoth, right? The gravity of Shadar Logoth is causing the taint to move by itself, right? Mogadine, didn't she just see the big bubbles as it swelled up even more? Like,
yes.
That you've got this black dome, which is actually a black sphere, right? The dome is halfway underground, or the sphere is halfway underground, so all you see is the dome. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and being attracted to the evil of Shadar Logoth. And all Rand is doing right now is essentially holding on to the structure he's created, and the siphon effect is pulling the taint off of saidin.
Right. The siphon has kicked in at long last.
That's sort of what I get out of this. Also, you know, pain, agony, suffering, all the things that Rand gets to do on a regular basis.
Don't forget woe.
This is also the part where he's taking on a lot more insanity. This is where the taint is running through his soul to such a degree that he is actively increasing in insanity points, like second by second during this part of the process. When he comes out worse the other side, this is the part where worse is being applied.
This is where Robert Jordan was like, how explicitly can I make him insane? Right? Like,
people aren't understanding that he is insane. He is not stressed. He is insane. Also stressed.
Inside of his head has become a pretty busy place at this point. I mean, you've got Leah Theron, you've got Moradin. They're all sharing that space equally. And now he's bonded all three of the women plus Alana. So that's 4, 5, 6, you know. And then you've got Moradin, who's technically bonded to Moghedien and Lanfear, but that's a whole nother.
How many of us don't, like, scream in our heads occasionally in frustration, or is that just me?
I mean, I would quibble with occasionally.
Right.
Do you not? I don't know. I've been frustrated sometimes lately, and I'm just sitting on my sofa, like, in my head, but I just don't do it for real, because it would alarm the cats and my wife and the neighbors, and, you know. But yeah, I feel like there are a number of instances throughout the series where RJ has Rand do tremendous channeling events where he swallows a lot of taint, or he's, experiences a great deal of the taint, and then it always seems like he's noticeably crazier afterwards. Like the battle for Kyrian in book 5, like there's a noticeable shifting insanity after he channels so much of the power during that battle, or fighting the Choedan and using Kalendor and, zapping everybody. He seems to have slipped further, and this is definitely one of those, and I think probably the biggest one, because he's definitely far more facing the taint here than anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, the volume of power he is processing. He never uses the access key before or after, right? This is the biggest he ever opens up himself to the power.
Doesn't he use it to balefire Natrum's barrow?
Oh, shit, right, yeah, of course, that. But also, that is for, 5 minutes? This is for 8 hours.
He uses half of it to destroy Roydian with Asmodean, but not for very long.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, this is the over the duration and the intensity and the scale of Sa'angreal, this is the most he ever channels.
Well, and also he has siphoning all of the taint, like all the taint's going through him, all of it. Like, this isn't just like a little touch. This isn't him sticking his hand through. This isn't him pulling some through. All the taint he is going through his funnel. And so, yeah, he's just trying. The putrid flood overwhelmed everything else, and he hung on by his fingernails to keep from being swept away by it.
Right. He is at this point not in control or even able to bring it to a halt. At this point, he just has to wait it out. It's like when you take too many drugs and you realize that, like, okay, I guess that's what I'm doing for the next 6 hours. I just got to ride this out, hold on to the tree, and just be here. Like, that's where he's at this point. He's way too high. He is way too high.
I sort of imagine a dam draining, and you are holding, like, closed one section that if it opens up, it'll sweep away the whole hillside. And so you just have to stand there while the whole dam drains.
Exactly. At some point, he'll be able to let go, but, like, no time soon.
No. and he's not in control of when he lets go. He can no longer shape what he's holding on to. It's just hold on and hope to God you don't run out of energy.
I mean, the description of he can't even tell that Sayadine is there because the taint has completely overwhelmed all of the sense that experiences channeling. Like, that is terrifying when you consider how much attention it has to be paid to handling Sayadine. The fact that he is now just blindly flying. Like, he is flying an airplane through a storm blindfolded. It is... You can't do that, Rand. What is happening? Like, you're very concerned for him at this point, despite the fact that you know there are more books. Like, it's very concerning.
Yeah, and you get into book 10, and he's kind of fucked up. Like, he doesn't seem like he's doing so great in this book. When we do see him, we don't see him very much in book 10.
No, a little bit at the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's aging rapidly through here. He's taking at least a decade off of his life in one day. Just sheer, like, wearing his body out.
But, one of the reasons we're also doing Crossroads of Twilight at the same time as the cleansing is because of the overlap in time periods, right? Like, we are going to see, the end of the day from Daved Hanlon's perspective, right? So, yeah. I've been really enjoying this spreading out of the final chapter. I think it's really been nice to sort of know that as we go through these chapters, we're sort of seeing the event happen minute by minute.
It's been very fun.
I think it's been a very clever way to go through it and make, because the narrative choice he made with writing Crossroads wasn't particularly well thought out, and I know he regretted doing it that way, so I felt like it was a good way to, like, make the best use of that narrative choice to draw meaning out of it. So it was a good way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to do a re-edit of these books, like definitely Winter's Heart and Crossroads, maybe even the one before that, and just cut a bunch of it and reorganize it and make it like, this is what you should read if you can't deal with the slog. This has everything in it that you need. Nothing that you don't.
cut.
The essential cut of the slog.
So like the Winter Dragon edit?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because that was good. You know, you can take the content that's there, convey the message in a more succinct way, and make it actually quite good. Because there's good stuff here. It's just repetitive and long and out of order.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I understand very much the desire to show the same thing from other people's perspectives, because it's like you really want to get in there and it can be so worthy, but it's like if you're trying to tell a story that's not necessarily compelling in a narrative sense, even if it is compelling from an individual writing sense, or if you can show things just from a writing perspective, but it's like one is a writing exercise and the other is a story.
And we're having these POVs that last 4, 5, 6 chapters, and a lot of that can be cut down to a single chapter, right? Like you're really maybe 2, depending on how long these perspectives are. But like there's a lot in there that can be reduced and cut out to a reasonable size, and you get the same effect, only you're going to read 10 chapters instead of 50 or 60. And then you can move those around in interesting ways. So they happen before the cleansing, so you can, or like during the cleansing, and you can have sort of the cleansing itself spread out a little bit so it doesn't just happen all at the end. You know, Jordan did this really well in his earlier books where you were bouncing between different perspectives during a final battle, and it stretched it out a little bit and made it much more interesting. And I feel like he lost that in, you know, then he just has these final battles that take up the last half of the last chapter, and you're like, whoa, that was fast. Like, but it's the same battle. It's just the way he's spreading it out. Speaking of which...
Speaking of, we're like criticizing how he should have edited it. We still take 2 hours to get through each one of these chapters. So, you know, we are hypocrites. We do recognize that, but also we're right. We contain multitudes.
We do.
All right, so shifting to Crossroads of Twilight, Chapter 15, Gathering Darkness, with the dragon's fang as the symbol. Morgan, do you want to read us into this Elenia perspective that you've requested?
All right. Yes. The evening sun was a ball of blood on the treetops, casting a lurid light across the camp, a widely spaced sprawl of horse lines and canvas-covered wagons and high-wheeled carts and tents in every size and sort, with the snow between trampled to slush. Not the time of day or sort of place that Elenia wished to be on horseback. The smell of boiling beef wafting from the big black iron cookpots was enough to turn her stomach. The cold air frosted her breath and promised a bitter night to come, and the wind cut through her best red cloak without regard for the thick lining of plush white fur. Snow Fox was supposed to be warmer than other furs, but she had never found it so. Holding the cloak closed with one gloved hand, she rode slowly and tried very hard, if not very successfully, not to shiver. Given the hour, it seemed more than likely she would be spending the night here, but as yet she had no idea where she would sleep. Doubtless in some lesser noble's tent, with the lord or lady shuffled off to find haven elsewhere, and trying to put the best face on being evicted. But Aramilla liked leaving her on tenterhooks until the very last, about beds and everything else. One suspense was no sooner dispelled than another replaced it. Plainly, the woman thought the constant uncertainty would make her squirm, perhaps even strive to please. That was far from the only miscalculation Aramilla had made, beginning with the belief that Elenia Sarand's claws had been clipped.
Yeah. Elenia is a fun antagonist. I won't call her a villain, but she's a fun antagonist.
Put at the top of this page the humanity of assholes before I realized Daved Hanlon was in this, because he doesn't really have any humanity. He's just an asshole.
Sure.
But yeah, she's an asshole, but an interesting one. I think that her POV is really clever because it's like Jordan's had this Elayne succession going on with tons of Elayne chapters, but Elayne has a ton of different bullshit she's dealing with, and the succession arc is just part of it because she's dealing with the sea folk and the kin and just all of that other bullshit. And so he takes this one bit with Elenia's point of view to show all of the main rivals and show everything that's going on in that camp and basically set up what happens at the end of book 11, where they have the battle at the gates and the people who immediately start to swear fealty to Elayne and give her the throne at the end. And he lays that out right in this scene from the point of view of one of her antagonists. And all of that would be lost if we were trying to get it from Elaine's point of view, because it's just all, there's too much going on from her perspective. And so I felt like it was really cleverly done here. And plus, I just love to get little minor POVs that he does because he's so good at showing different people. And yeah, she's an asshole, but she's interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to see more little POVs like this. This is the kind of stuff that I love. I think he does it really well, really builds the world out, and more so than just having Elayne talk about them in the third person. The other thing it sets up is this guy named Jack Laurent. He's a dark friend who basically sets up the whole escape in the Andorran dungeons that leads to all sorts of, that basically leads to the Dark Friends escaping, right?
Right, when Elayne goes down there pretending to be one of the Forsaken and so on and so forth. Yeah, he is a torturer who is employed by...
Aramilla.
No, employed by Nason.
No, he's employed by Aramilla.
Well, he came from Nason's house, right? Aramilla has kind of retained him. But yeah, because he passes to Sylvaise.
I know Sylvaise employs him after Aramilla, basically is arrested, but I don't know that he originally works with Nason. I don't think it matters. It's just I know that Sylvaise is probably the most interesting character at the end of it because she's the one gray rocking everyone throughout it all, just sitting at the table. And yeah, I like her a lot too. She's kind of the pivotal character that everything hinges on, and so she's super cool. But yeah, there's just a lot here.
Sylvaise is very cool. And yeah, Jacques Lunault feels like a red herring. He should end up like a Daved Hanlon. And he just kind of lurks in the shadows and then drifts away to get stabbed in the back. He doesn't get to go anywhere, but it's kind of satisfying because he's just a bad guy. There's no redeeming features to him. But he's got such a cool sounding name, and he's really threatening sounding in this chapter. He really seems like he's going to go somewhere.
And, he does cause that thing. He frees the people who he breaks in with Tamila and Eldrith. He causes the freeing of the Dark Friends. I think that's what he's setting up, right? Is this he needs someone to be that catalyst, and that's
right.
He's creating that persona here because this is the first mention of him.
It's interesting that none of the nobles that he works for is a Dark Friend. He's just a Dark Friend who's employed by assholes.
I mean, yeah, it's not always Dark Friends all the way down. They're scattered all the way through society, but they are often assholes, so they work for assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not all patent fanes spreading their corruption. Sometimes they just fly under the radar.
And then there's the Weiramons, the guy that just rise to the level of their incompetence, who are just both evil and incompetent at the same time. It's wonderful.
And it's Jack is a sadistic person with interesting talents and, proud to be able to, torture people with just some ropes. And so he has skills that he can market to assholes and, being a dark friend and able to engage those sadistic skills. And it's a marketable skill to people who aren't afraid to make use of it.
Surprising he's not a White Cloak.
Oh, right. He couldn't wear his hat if he were a White Cloak, so you gotta have his fashion.
Yeah, yeah. He likes to work as an artisanal torturer, not part of the corporate structure,
Right.
So Elayne is basically complaining about, as far as I can tell, everything, right? this winter campaign was a mistake. Aramilla lacks the wit to be queen, pure and simple, punishing me for these things that she thought was a slight. But, well, I mean, it was a slight. I was insulting her because she's an idiot. You know, like, there's this, but just like she's in her head just complaining about everything that's going wrong. And it sounds like a pretty miserable experience to be in Aramilla's camp and subject to her, you know, what Jordan writes is a very typical bad management style of pitting people against each other, arbitrary punishments, keeping people uncertain about what the future holds, and just keeping them in fear. And that's how you control the people who are sworn to you.
It seems like it's super effective because it's like, you know, Elenia and then Nain were arrested by Dylan when they tried to declare themselves for the throne. And so Dylan was keeping them in Erangel, and then they got broken out by Aramilla's men. And so she's like holding on to them basically so that they'll be forced to support her for the throne. And yeah, using her little tactics to keep them from being able to gather any support. And so you see her like looking at people and being like, okay, there's only a couple people from House Sarand. Nobody else is around who will be an ally. And so she's condescending to smile and nod and act outwardly kind toward all of these underlings. And you see her acknowledging in her head the thing that, you know, someone like Elayne understands, that you need the people to support you because that's how you build a strong kingdom. But like, you know, a Trakand, you know, treats people with respect because treat people with respect because that's how you're supposed to treat people. Whereas Elenia treats them with respect because that's how you get something out of them, the whole time condescending to them and thinking less of them, but at least pretending not to. And so she's got that whole dialogue.
A consummate politician.
Yeah. Whenever she's not complaining about the miserable existence, she's just doing a classism right and left. Yeah, she sounds like a miserable headspace to be in. I mean, she is a miserable headspace to be in. Like, she's interesting because she's giving us a nice panning shot of stuff, but also, like, she would not be any fun to hang out with. She's really not.
Oh, no.
I love what she thinks about Elayne, sat snug and warm in the comfort of the royal palace, attended by scores of well-trained servants, and likely without two thoughts in her head beyond what to wear tonight at supper prepared by the palace cooks. Rumor has it she was with child, possibly by some guardsman. And I just love her like, oh, that spoiled brat sitting in the palace, getting served by the cooks. And we know it's nothing like that.
That's skank.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've had a little bit of interaction with Elenia because all of these nobles, we truly meet them. We see them first in Fires of Heaven because Morghese sees them like around Robin and realizes he's conspiring with them, and that gives her the little jolt that she needs to start breaking free of his compulsion. And then we see them at the beginning of Lord of Chaos when Rand's having to deal with them all. And so he has that interaction with Elenia where he's trying to figure out, you know, he's realized he's Tigraine's son, and he's trying to figure out if he's like related to Elayne, and it's sort of like, what, you're all cousins? Wait, well, what if you were farmers? And she's like, that's a weird thing to say. Well, if you were farmers, we probably wouldn't be related at all. And he's like, you know, right. And so
as I call it, the we're not the Game of Thrones scene.
I wasn't gonna say it.
Yeah, so it's like, all she wants to do is talk about why her claim to the Lion Throne is the best because of how close she is related to Ashara or whatever. And it's just sort of like, so you get her dry sense of herself because she has such a wonderful understanding of the history of Andor, and that's her like talking point for herself. And you hear Rand's thoughts about her, which are, not flattering. As far as Rand thinks poorly about, any woman in general. Yeah, she's a miserable politician and just kind of an asshole. She's an asshole.
She's very cynical, too. Like, she's, like, dissembling like she knows people. And it's just, politician. Ugh.
Sea folk making holes in the air. Absolute drivel.
I did. Also, this brings us to our first instance in this chapter. There are 3 different words that all basically mean the same thing that I noticed in this chapter. We've got chit, which comes from this, and then also Choedan and bint. All three of those are in this chapter, and I just...
also, I believe Daved Hanlon uses trollop as well.
Oh, yeah, there's that too. I didn't even bother looking at that because, I don't know, but like...
So common.
Yeah, but chit, I just want to take us on a tiny little language tangent. Chit comes from Old English for sprout. It means like, you know, a young, immature girl, but it's the etymology of it is it's from an Old English word for like sprout. This is sprout.
You little sprout. But like, I feel like sprout is a cute name for a little kid, right?
It is. It is, as opposed to Choedan, which is of uncertain origin, but might come from heathen, which is less cutesy than sprout. Sprout is cute. Heathen is maybe, you know, a war crime. And then bint. Okay, bint is the weirdest one. Bint originally in Arabic just means like girl or daughter. Like it's just like the word for that. But then in the 19th century in the UK, it became slang for like your girlfriend or like your bit on the side. So bint is a derogatory word in English, but it comes from just like the Arabic word for girl because, I don't know, English people suck or whatever. And I didn't even think to look up trollop. I'm assuming it comes from trollic, an ancient word from Atlantis, because that's how time works.
I don't know. It's just so interesting to have all of these lovely old-fashioned words to call women names.
Very inventive history, yes. Jordan was really reaching deep into the bucket of random slurs for women for this chapter.
I'm just gonna not talk for this segment.
That's all I had.
I don't need clips of me saying those words out there for you to use.
Yeah, Seth, can you just say that again slowly? Use it in a sentence for the mic, please.
And then Aramella's just a pea-brained ninny.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I love that her horse's name is Dawn Wind.
Not pretentious at all.
No, not at all. Just I ride the Dawn Wind.
And then she like won't collect her cloak, like because she doesn't want to look silly, so she ends up all cold while she rides her Dawn Wind. And she cuts such a striking figure with her big streaming cape, and she's just like, oh my god, like she's hilarious.
I let me smile at everyone.
The Crimson Banner of Sarand.
Yeah, we get a lot of like descriptions of colors and icons and houses in this chapter.
And it's interesting, like, and he sets things up pretty well because, like, in the first couple pages, he's talking about, or he's having her talk about as they're walking past about seeing House Anshar's red fox and the Baron's winged hammer, and then mentions that they're of little account in the long run because Carind, Anshar, and Lur had gotten singed badly by being slow when Morghese took the throne. This time they would take Anshar and Baron wherever the advantage lay the instant they saw it clearly, abandoning Aramilla with as great an alacrity as they had left to join her when the time came. And she's assuming that when she finally gets all her ducks in a row so that she can take the throne, that they'll hop on her bandwagon. Well, the minute that Selvace declares House Karen for Elayne, they immediately hop on the bandwagon and declare Anshar and Baron for it right on top of that towards the end of the next book. And so it's like he lays that out right there too. So I just love how he does that. He's like, how should I lay this out and set it up? I'm going to put you in the head of this asshole, and you can listen to her whine and lay out this camp, and then she'll just show you all of these people who she knows way better than Elayne does. And I think it's really well done. So there's me getting excited about that.
Yeah, it's a good politics chapter, as the politics chapters go. Even for me, I do enjoy it because it's the way that it all slides together in Knife of Dreams, which I wanted to ask about that. She says here, no one was going to rest the rose crown on her head before summer. Are the books done by summer?
I think the seasons and time kind of start to unravel by late-ish spring, and so it ends up everything just starts going gray, and so they don't really have summer.
Okay, so when does Elayne get the crown seasonally? I know it happens in Knife of Dreams, but like...
I think it's still winter, or I'm pretty sure it's still snowing out, or if it's not, it's like muddy and shitty. Pretty sure the weather's shitty.
I think it's early spring, because it's in Knife of Dreams.
Yeah.
And yeah, Gathering Storm is when they're like, oh my God, spring. Are you not going to spring? I guess we should have the last battle because it's not springing. So she does get the gross crown onto her head before summer.
Mm-hmm.
So that prediction is wrong.
The rule of thumb is the last 4 books are about a month each.
Well, yeah, because Rand gets Elayne pregnant in book 9, and it's pretty much said that she's 6 months pregnant during the last battle because, like, they're trying to basically, carve the babies out, and it said they're just barely possibly viable. And so it's like they're 6 months, I think. So if it's, January or...
So maybe like 2 months per book? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Oh, yeah, and then chat's pointing out that there's a comment in Knife of Dreams about the winter runners being taken up in the palace because it's a seasonal change. So, yeah, that's confirming what you guys are saying. Okay, thank you, everyone.
So, yeah, we've got a little more time passing, but, I mean, essentially we've had, like, a month or 2 since the end of Lord of Chaos. It really hasn't been that long.
Yeah, but Elenia is wrong, is the point. When she's like, it's not going to happen before summer. And it's like, well, it is going to happen before summer, actually.
Gateways change everything.
Everything. Well, yeah, because she disbelieves gateways like a paragraph prior to that comment. So, yeah, of course, that's what she thinks.
So, basically, he's kind of showing this, like, conflict between Elenia and Nain, which they were forced to, like, share an apartment together when they were captive in Arendelle, so they've kind of been at each other's throats all along, and so she's able to manipulate Nain into agreeing that she'll support her for the Rose Crown, but there's, like, this underlying suggestion basically letting you know that Aramilla has been threatening Elenia with gross Nason, and that's like the threat that's being held over her head, but that because she has her husband who will break her free and Nain doesn't have anybody, like, she's in a weaker position. And so that's like the politics being kind of where Elenia feels like she has a stronger position to get at least that house, Nain's house, supporting her, and with the hopes that, because she assumes that Aramilla is not going to succeed because Aramilla is an idiot and is doing this winter siege. And so she's like, she's going to fall on her face, and I'm going to go around and smile at everybody, and everybody's going to remember how nice I am, and then they're all going to transfer their loyalty to me. So she's just kind of doing that.
Yeah, because Nain comes riding over to talk to her, and it's like a risky thing to do, and it's all to ask for help to please get out of this ridiculous nonsense. And Elenia agrees to it while having zero plans for getting out of it. She's like, okay, if I make plans to escape, I guess I'll include you now that you've promised that you'll sign over your loyalty to me. And then immediately Aramilla comes over and puts them in the same bed together so that way they can, like, do more plotting or whatever. And it's just this whole thread of what Elenia is navigating is very confusing. But Nason, God, Jordan.
Nason, yeah.
At least he switched from S. At least he switched from the letter S. But Nain and Nason is just like, oh,
in the same chapter. Yeah.
But yeah, Nason.
I was going to point that out when we got to it.
Nason is such a gross threat that she uses to manage Elenia.
But yeah, one of the things that I was appreciating this, though, is that all along he's showing some humanity from Elenia, because it's like, yeah, Elenia is thinking gross classist things about all of these people, but it's also highlighting this relationship with her maid, who she's obviously quite fond of. And it's like, whenever she's feeling very happy, she likes to buy her maid lots of dresses and give her lots of presents and everything. And so it's showing this kind of like, she thinks poorly of a lot of people, but then there's this like one exception, which is, not saying much. That's not like it makes Elenia a very good person, but it's like she has this human interaction where she feels this great sense of affection for her maid, and then later on you have Aramilla fobbing one of her maids off to, like, quote unquote, distract Nason, and Aramilla is disgusted by it. Elenia is disgusted by it. And she's thinking how, it's one thing to, like, throw some rando woman at Nason, but to do it to your own maid because of her sense of how fond she is of her maid, and how when her maid does her a solid, she buys her presents, and how the fonder she is of her maid, or the more that her maid works to try to, like, you know, work as a go-between to keep Nason away from her. She's like, I'm going to get her more dresses and better dresses and give her tons of silk embroidery and everything because I love the shit out of this woman because she's a great maid and awesome. And, you know, and it's just kind of like to show her in that kind of light is interesting. I like it because it's very human in a way. It's like you're an asshole and you look down on everyone, but you have this sense of affection toward this like one person who you see as beneath you, but you're super fond of as well. And when you feel happy, you want to give her nice things, which doesn't make her a good person in any way, but it's just an interesting thing, like as opposed to someone like Daved Hanlon who would never do anything nice to anyone. So it's the types of people he writes and like the different ways that shitty people can be shitty, and how some shitty people can also be nice and some shitty people are 100% shitty. And some
shitty people understand how loyalty works and that you shouldn't, you know, screw other people that support you. Yeah. Because doing that will bite you in the ass eventually.
And some shitty people genuinely care about certain people.
Right.
Right. And it's one of the ways that Jordan likes to show us about like the moral gradient that his characters are falling on is how do they treat the staff.
Mm-hmm.
And this is giving you a really, you know, it's like, yes, we're in the asshole region of the spectrum, but there are still gradations. It's not a big bin. There's lots of little bins. And it makes sense.
But then also, like, Elayne is also a person who's willing to kill people to get what she wants, right? A series of unfortunate accidents would see to that, she says. She will kill people so they will vote for her. And I was wondering how many of the deaths of the high seats that lead to those kids voting for Elayne were caused by Elenia. Did she polish off any of those old high seats? She's planning on it here, right?
No. She was in prison for the entire period where that would have been politically viable, because you got to ration that shit. You can't just do it on a whim. And the whole time that would have mattered, she was in some kind of imprisonment.
Yeah, because, like, okay, so when Morghese took the throne, all of these people, Aramilla, Nain, Elenia, Corinne, Nason, Lur, all of them were basically pardoned, but weren't allowed into the palace except for state reasons. It's one of the reasons she's so outraged when she goes to Ravin to be like, hey, I heard about this shit going down in the Two Rivers and, you know, we need to deal with this rebellion. And he's like, you know, fuck off, I dealt with it. And she sees that he's got all of her political enemies and thinking to herself, they're not allowed in this palace except for very special occasions. And Elenia is the type of person who's sort of like, if she were in that situation, they wouldn't be in the palace because they'd all be dead. And so, you know, Morghese and Elayne would know, hey, you can't be killing people off like that because that's actually going to reduce your political stability, because it's not a good scene when you kill off your rivals. You're not Kyrian and you're not Terrans. You know, it doesn't work like that in this country. But Elenia is just, operates a different way. And so, it's interesting. And I love how she's showing that the only reason that Aramilla wants the throne is just for the money, especially because if you are in Elayne's point of view, you know that they don't have any. And so it's like...
Yeah.
Did we talk about how Nason is probably suffering from like an Alzheimer's disease of some sort?
We have not talked about Nason yet. But yeah, he's definitely suffering from some neurological degradation. That seems obvious.
Like the inability to control the groping, but like the fact that and like that's a common of like Reagan was like that, right? Like he was as he got dementia, he started groping everybody. Like, cause you lack the impulse control. You turn angry, you lack the ability to regulate your emotions, whether that becomes horniness or anger, right? Like, or fear.
And he's being very erratic in lots of ways, right? He's putting sprigs of flowers in his hair. He's wearing weirdly embroidered shirts. He's going from eloquent to lecherous at the turn of a hat. Like, yeah, that tracks.
He's like smart enough to know that he wants to keep his granddaughter basically right next to Aramilla so that his other members of his house don't have any access to her, so that they can basically be like, okay, you're not going to be high seat anymore. We're going to put you out to pasture and actually let Sylvace control the house now, because you're obviously erratic and no longer, capable of taking care of shit. And so to keep that from happening, like he's clever enough or aware enough to know that he doesn't want that to happen. And so he basically puts Selvace under Aramilla's control, and then kind of tells her, you'll be high seat when I'm gone, but not before, and I can wreck whatever ruin until then.
And then speaking of men, moving to a slightly nicer one, Daved Sarand really reminds me of Perrin, as he's described here. He could take them both to ruin in the belief he was helping her, and he might do it even knowing it meant their ruination. And earlier than that, what Elenia wanted had been his guide since before their wedding vows. Like, this is a very dedicated husband that she's got. And he doesn't really do anything interesting other than just represent the fact that she has an army. But he sounds like Perrin.
I was going to say Perrin without any talent or drive, right? Because he just fails everything he does, right? He never really...
He doesn't do anything. He doesn't... There's nothing to fail at, because he just kind of is held as a force that could be used for a long time, because she keeps telling him to do nothing. And so he does nothing. And then eventually, I guess she goes off with them. Like, I'm not sure what actually happens with them, with his army. But he doesn't fail. He doesn't try. He just is.
He ends up tied to a tree in the prologue of Memory of Light.
Oh, shit. When all the metal melts? When all the metal melts?
Yeah.
Oh, it's him. I forgot it's him. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, because he's just left out there wandering around with no instructions from his wife to do anything, and he has no innovation, no drive, no creativity. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, all the metal melts, and that one guy is like, good thing I remember how to stone nap like a caveman.
So is Jared the one that they tie to the tree and walk away from? Because he thinks the Aes Sedai have done it, and they're like, no, this is,
It's like he goes insane. It's like he completely just like starts looping on just like this one short little thing, and they tie him to a tree, and he literally won't stop yelling. And it's the weirdest, like, your brain melted along with all the metal in your camp. What the fuck happened?
I think it's the biggest, like, he can't deal with the fact that it's the last battle. He's so focused on little politics that he doesn't understand that something is superseding those politics. Something bigger is happening. And he is no longer, his little ambition no longer matters in the face of what's the end of the world.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. There will be people who are like that even as they literally go under the waves. So...
But my stock prices.
Like, you don't know what house Elenia comes from, but Sarand is one of the big 19 houses. So Jared is the high seat, and she's just his wife. But, she has... she's the one who can be queen because he's a king, obviously, he's a man, obviously, and so she has the power technically through his house lines, and she runs the show. And so it seems like Nain or Aramilla would reasonably, because they're technically the high seats of their houses, be more within their rights to be the queen, but it's sort of like she feels like she's more qualified, and she has Jared, who obviously has, it seems like he must have some manner of martial skill or generaling ability, because she seems very confident that he'd be able to break her free if she wanted him to.
Right.
So she feels like she's got more going for her than Nain. And yeah, that's really clever where Nain comes up to her and is like trying to, contrive this meeting. And yeah, basically expects that she's going to try to break free because she has Jared, and so offers something, even though Elenia has offered nothing in return and has no expectations of doing anything, because she just assumes the siege is going to fall apart. And in the meantime, she's laying all her seeds and trying to gather the loyalty so that she can pick up the pieces.
Mm-hmm. Right. And there's this whole thing about how she won't help Nain unless she has like written confirmation of this pledge, because if Nain breaks that, then like the entire power of their house goes away through this like complex thing about how like the littler houses will drift away from the big house, so then the big house becomes a little house, and like I don't fully follow it, but I guess it makes sense.
It's basically if you break pledges, you can't get like contracts. It's essentially you get bad credit, is essentially what she's saying. And then you can't borrow money, and then you can't pay your bills, and then people drift away over time. right? So it's essentially by breaking your word, you can't no one will trust you anymore because they've got this written piece of paper that's saying you were going to obey this contract and you're clearly breaking it. So the way to get around that, because she's pledged her loyalty to Aramilla, well, Aramilla has to die. Mm-hmm. That's the only way around it, because if that person's alive and you're not loyal to them, you will slowly die out as a house. I'm sorry, I was just reading this description of Jacques Laurent, a lean man with one of those Fresco Terrebonner veils covering his huge mustache and a conical cap pushed the hood of his cloak to a ridiculous height. So I'm just imagining this person with like forked mustaches and this like really pointy head. He would look sort of like some weird alien creature, right? This dude looks weird. He's tall and
like
thin.
A cone head.
Yeah, like a cone head or like a devil creature of some kind, right? Like
he feels very caricaturish.
Yeah.
Like every feature has been exaggerated to an absurd degree.
Like some bizarre wimple.
Yeah, it's almost like he's got the Fu Manchu that says "I'm an evil guy," right? Like,
right. Like, and he's twirling it while holding one of those cigarette holder thingamajiggies. Like,
and he smiles too much, so he's got this big, like, false grin on his face all the time, and he carries, cords for a torturer. So, yeah.
That's not all he uses them for.
Right. Well, wait. What else does he use them for?
I mean, there's torture and then there's torture.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, if he's proficient in one, then he's proficient in the other.
Right. Really. One is with consent and one is without, is basically what you're saying. It's the same thing. It's just,
Yeah.
Zul says he has one gold tooth. I think Zul's right.
Ooh, yeah, definitely. With a name like Jacques Lunal, if he doesn't have a gold tooth in the front, like, he's doing it wrong.
Disappointed.
Okay, so do we need to talk more about Nason? We've talked around him. Let's see, like people just show up and are interacting. Nason goes to punch the maid, and then Aramilla shows up and is annoying as hell. I hate Kate Redding's voice of her. I mean, it works. It's so annoying.
You're supposed to hate it, right?
Like, where's the skip button? Ah, God, it's terrible. And the next thing I think that's worth talking about is Sylvaise, just because she gets described as looking plain and having a very flat, like, autistic affectation, and clearly that means she's stupid. And she just sits there and is plain and stupid until she completely undercuts Aramilla with, like, her first real statement. And I really like Sylvaise. I like how she's just...
I love her.
I mean, obviously she's been traumatized into this particular, like, way of being, but also I love how she's able to just sit there and just let people weave a noose for their own necks and then build a scaffold and walk onto it. And she just has to, like, push one button and then everything's fine.
She reminds me of a certain brown sister who just drops a book off.
Yeah, kinda.
Right? There's a lot of that, just like, oh, I'm clueless. I don't know what's going on. Writing down all your secrets.
Right, and the way that she gets written off for looking plain, and then turns out she's smart as hell, is like, yeah.
That's a Varen personality right there. Just not nice at eye.
Yeah, she's got all the political calculations and none of the magic, but... Yeah, no, you're right. She has a very ambitious secret Triple Agent Brown.
Triple Agent Brown.
Also, Sylvaise is the only one who doesn't look away when the maid gets shoved in front of Nason, which is a really interesting, like, again, like, she's not stupid. She's just unwilling to bow down to social convention when she could gain information instead.
Yeah, her horrible, awful grandfather, and she just... Yeah, she's so interesting because it's like Elenia mentions about how he basically has kept her isolated, chased off any potential suitors. And so, yeah, she has had kind of a really shitty and isolated upbringing. So obviously her social skills aren't great, whether or not she's also neurodivergent. And then, yeah, it feels like she's just kind of gray rocking through this whole thing, pretending to be, utterly unengaged and kind of, pretending to be stupid and just watching everything and recording it all. And yeah, I love her.
Watching everybody else fall while she just sort of picks up the pieces one by one. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
So yeah, there's this interaction between Elenia and Aramilla, which is just, it goes on for a couple of pages, and I don't have a lot to say about it. They're just...
Well, Elenia is upset because Aramilla basically promised to keep creepy Nathan away from her, and then didn't keep him away from her, and so she's having to, have her maid run interference or whatever, and yeah, it's just... It's awful, it's like...
It's two Karens arguing at a Walmart. It's not entertaining. Like, I just don't care.
You're both wrong, and I want you both to fall off the edge of the world.
Right.
Both go fall in a ditch and die together, please.
I don't care about your complaints. Your complaints aren't important, and please go away.
But yeah, we get descriptions about where they're going to have food, and that they're going to have to share a bed. There's just a lot of, like, suspicion and discomfort. Right, that's really the takeaway.
Yeah, it's it's an uncomfortable scene, and it's like, while it's hard to feel bad for Elenia, it's like it's super uncomfortable to think about. Basically keeping your political rivals in check by threatening them with creepy, rapey old men, and that's just automatically uncomfortable to read about. But yeah, the point of view and the whole thing set up, it's like it's not particularly interesting from a narrative perspective, nor is it necessarily important. It's just that it's set up for everything that's going to happen as far as Elayne getting the throne. You meet Sylvace, you learn that Nathan is basically totally addled and not long for this world. You learn that Corinne and Lur will go wherever the wind is going to blow. You know that Aramilla is basically absolutely a loon, or doesn't have enough brains to know a smart way to try to get the throne. And then you have heard quite a bit about Elenia and Nain, but you see a lot about their interactions. And so, like, it's all just there and laid bare so that when the actual taking of the throne happens at the end of the next book, you've got all of these people laid out and you see exactly how it goes. It's well done because it's like everything that he does with Elayne and the throne is like, I feel like he got too caught up in the Succession arc. I think he really enjoyed writing it, and so he got bogged down in it. And he should have switched up the POVs more and not gotten so lost in Elaine's point of views, because if he had done more of these POV switches, he would have been able to give a more rounded perspective and told the story better, and it wouldn't have gotten so... It gets kind of dull sometimes.
Really?
Well, I mean, sometimes a little bit. I feel like it would read better if there were more POV switches, especially for something like this, because there gives a sense of movement, even if it's just you're literally in someone else's head. There's just inevitably a sense of movement when you switch POVs.
Right, especially in this kind of ensemble cast plot of a Succession arc. This isn't one person's dark night of the soul. This is the fate of nations. It takes a village to agree on legislation or whatever. Like, there's so many opportunities for interesting POVs that maybe overuse the main cast a little much.
Put me in a Seafolk head, and I want to hear them bitch about Elayne and bitch about the whole situation. Put me in the Kin's head and tell me what they're really thinking about everything. Show me all of it from every angle, and that would make the whole Succession plot much more engaging. So anyway, sorry, Seth, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, I think what he's trying to do is sort of show you that Elaine's doing all this planning on one side, and then you flash to the other side and realize just how dumb they're being on that side, and you realize just, I think what he's trying to show is the contrast that the two sides and how they're working. Sort of like if you're playing a game of chess, like you can concentrate on your side, but then you flash over and realize what the other person is thinking and realize they may not be as smart as you think they are. You may be overestimating their intelligence. They may be just reacting pretty simply instead of like planning things out ahead of time.
That is a theme Jordan uses a lot in these books, is sides being grossly confused about how competent or incompetent the other side is.
Very Fog of War. And like pointing out just the different expectations that Elayne has for her enemies, and like, why am I losing to this person, really? Right.
But yeah, this perspective ends with the lovely hanging line of the only question was whether Aramilla or Nathan should die first. And I do kind of love that. for Elenia and for all of us that those two characters are slated for death because they are terrible, terrible people that we don't need.
Yeah, and I'm definitely on Team Elenia for that because I think she's an asshole, but they're bigger assholes, and don't know that I would say Elenia has a lot of redeeming qualities, but at least she has more than they do.
So I would say Elenia is to Aramilla as Dylan is to Elayne, right? This sort of second in command who's, talented and could take the throne, but Elayne has gained her second in command's respect. And that person's working with her to take the throne, whereas Aramilla has only gained her second in command's disdain, and that's
fear.
Creating the fear. So, and that's creating this sort of internal fracture, and one of the reasons why she'll never succeed. But I would love to see like a contrasting POV from Dylan, right?
Oh yeah.
I've always wanted a Dylan POV.
Right?
That would have made the succession so great.
So
to
much
have POV.
better.
I want to see, because she, is on record as saying she thinks Elayne is the best choice for the throne. So put us in our head and have her tell us why.
Yes.
That would have been so good.
Right?
God, yeah.
And instead of being in Elaine's head complaining about goat's milk one more time, see like how she's actually being skilled at handling things and what her, strengths are instead of seeing her own insecurities in her own head.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that takes us to Daved Hanlon / Dolan Mellar combo platter, dark friend.
An asshole with no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
None. Not even a little. None.
Even the people he kills, I'm not like glad. I mean, he kills bad people, but like.
His one redeeming quality is his really satisfying death.
Oh, that was great.
It's true. He does die in a way that is truly amazing.
So knowing that, I'd find him very satisfying to read, knowing that, like, especially when he's, like, bitching about Brigida not being Brigida. And I'm like, oh, you'll find out.
Yeah, when he's like, she's not even a real hero. It's like, how about comes back over her own decapitated corpse to kill you, hero of the horn.
Suck it, Daved Hanlon.
Literally, arrow through your face hole.
Right. The first one goes through his chest.
But yeah, this is a fun Dark Friend POV because we get a lot of different plots intersecting. A lot of different Dark Friend characters.
So, yeah, he's being followed because Elayne has been having him followed. So Elayne has been suspicious of him all along because him coming into her, under her radar with his, miraculous saving her was super suspicious. So they kind of had eyes on him all along. And so she's been having him followed and he keeps killing the people following her. And so they finally find the super accomplished cut purse in book 11 and get him to follow him, and how they find the house on Full Moon Street. I forget how many guys he ends up killing before they find someone who could successfully follow him.
A handful, I think.
Yeah, like
handful.
a 6 or something. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah,
I think
Something like that.
This is one of them.
But,
we're not sure where in the succession, but not the first, not the last, presumably.
Yeah, and you hear in his narrative he doesn't know who this person is following him from or why they're following him, just that they followed him basically from the palace.
Yeah, and he knows that it's not random because, first of all, he listened to the footsteps, but also because he can see lots of like cut purses and people like skulking away from him, right? Because he walks with that confidence that makes people go, oh, that's not a good victim. In fact, that's a person who might make me a victim. I'm going to get out of here. And this person is, despite that, still choosing to attack him. So he has 9 kinds of proof to say that this is a concerted effort to get him killed.
He's also not the kind of person to hesitate in case he might accidentally hurt an innocent. Like, oh, I shouldn't have been walking there. Your fault, right? Like, if this person wasn't following him, he still would have stabbed him in the face, right? Like, if this person was just wrong place, wrong time, wouldn't have mattered.
And he posits a couple of suggestions to himself about who it might be or who the follower might be from, but does not think that it might be Elayne. I think because he's such a misogynist that he couldn't possibly believe that she would be onto him. He never thinks that he's being followed because the queen to be is actually suspicious of his bullshit.
Right. He assumes that he's being threatened by rivalries from her allies, not that they've been onto him the whole time.
Or else other dark friends or something like that. But yeah, it never occurs to him that, she's saw through your bullshit from the beginning, so she's following you because she knows that you're up to something somewhere and she wants to find out where you go and who you're actually reporting to.
Yeah, that whole bullshit line about, like, are you close to sleeping with her? And he's like, closer than the day I came in. And it's like, well, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
She's way more suspicious of you than she was then. Like, yeah,
he's overestimating his own prowess with women on a lot of levels, basically. And speaking of how gross he is, I mean, there's this line about when he's going through the thing about all the different women that could be hurting him. And he's like, well, it could be the sea folk, like, because they suck because, like, they look like I should be able to grab at them. And then they pull knives on me and defend themselves when I do. And it's so rude. They look so hot, but I should be able to touch them. And it's just like, you're the grossest. You're the grossest. You are the grossest.
I think of all of the characters that RJ writes, he is probably the most disgusting. I think he's probably more disgusting than Pat and Fane, which is hard to pull off. I think he probably takes the cake for absolutely disgusting people.
I think it's because he's the most real. Like, we've never met a person who's been overtaken by an evil city and had magic fog coming out of their brain that makes paranoia happen.
You might not have a radio, but...
Okay, I've met energy vampires, but, like, Daved Hanlon, it's like I heard this description about how Dolores Umbridge is more hated than Voldemort in terms of our fandom experience with Harry Potter, #TransLives Matter, because we've all met a Dolores Umbridge. None of us has ever met a Voldemort. And so I think this is the same thing. Like, we all have heard, at least, about a Daved Hanlon. We all, at least, have heard about someone like that. Whereas, like, a Pat and Fane is a rarer creature, shall we say.
Much more of a fantasy trope.
We've seen Daved Hanlon types spew garbage on the internet and seen, he's just so...
Who was that guy who was writing advice for teenage boys that just got arrested for rape and trafficking?
Fucking Andrew Tate.
And his brother. And his brother.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, those guys suck.
They perish in a dark hole.
So that's just Daved Hanlon reborn in another age right there.
Totally. Yeah, we could say that Daved Hanlon was reborn into Andrew Tate. I mean, very different grifts, but sure, why not? They all suck.
So I think I spotted an Aes Sedai and her abducted sea folk apprentice.
Is that who they are?
I think. I mean, I don't have any proof for it. All right. But OK, so he's walking through the city and his step hesitated as two heavily cloaked women appeared at a crossing well ahead. But they moved on without glancing his way, and he breathed more easily because they got their cloaks up, their heads down. Two women going through the city. The timing pretty much works out. They were in hiding. So when he gets to his destination, he mentions the sea folk left. So I think they were in hiding, waiting for the sea folk to leave the city. Then they snuck out.
That totally makes sense because that exactly is what Matt and crew did outside of Abu Dar. Why wouldn't RJ recycle that?
It's Marlowe and Talon?
Yep.
Oh.
I figured they had to be someone, and I was going to ask who, and...
Headcanon accepted.
Yeah.
No proof.
All right.
I mean, it's two women with their cloaks up. Could be anybody. Could be nobody.
Why not?
They don't even glance at him because they are so worried about getting out of town that, like, as long as someone's not bothering them, they are not.
And they don't want them to see the face because they got the eyes,
Yep.
The Aes Sedai face with someone who's not.
They're not concerned about being attacked because they'll just,
Yeah, and it totally makes more sense that they know they can't outrun the sea folks, so you go to ground and hide, wait for them to leave, and then take off. And, headcanon absolutely accepted. That is watertight excellent.
Thank you.
All right.
So he mentions that today all of the channelers were on edge, and we know why. So that makes sure that we know we're still grounded in that day. And then we get to one of The most disturbing lines Jordan has ever written. He did not know why that seemed, stabbing a guy, he did not know why that seemed to paralyze a man's lungs so he could not cry out until he had drowned in his own blood. But he knew that it did. Like, there's something about the way he writes that sentence where he just puts the nasty part right at the front and then finishes up the thought that just, like, it's so disturbing. It's so disturbing.
And I would assume it's because he's cutting through the diaphragm, so you can't expand your lungs if your diaphragm's sliced open. So you can't draw in a breath.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I was trying to think through it. I was like, is it just because he's cutting like the main artery, so you're bleeding? No, the diaphragm. The diaphragm,
because the diaphragm is the muscle that increases the volume of your chest cavity and lets you expand your lungs. You do a little bit with the muscles in your ribs; those do help a little bit, but mostly it's your diaphragm that does the expansion.
That makes sense. Yeah, but it's just the way Jordan writes that is just like. Are you speaking from experience, sir?
Yes.
Sewell says it's disturbing because it's unfeeling curiosity. I think that she's probably right to a certain extent, but yeah, also possibly from experience. I don't know if not necessarily. I don't know. It's probably not quite the same as like, Christopher Lee having to school Peter Jackson about how,
right.
about stabbing someone in the back and how it actually wouldn't work that way.
Yeah,
that reminds me of the memes I've seen lately of people comparing how actors flop when they get shot and how people actually, people with unrestricted access to the internet would flop when they're pretending to get shot, because we've all seen just like how lights out it is if you get hit in the head, right? Like, but actors are always flailing around and stuff, and yeah, it's the same thing where it's just like death happens fast sometimes, especially with explosions or head impacts.
The internet's fucked us all up.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. I've seen things on the internet I don't even want to talk about. I don't even want to think about. Like, nope. I've definitely just clicked on things because they were there without any sort of filter or thought about whether or not I should click on it. And at this point, I'm numb to a lot of things.
I try to avoid doing that, but I was thinking about how I might have enjoyed doing a study in emergency management, but I was like, I don't want to be traumatized, and I feel like you're setting yourself up for potential trauma with that, so I think I'll study something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't generally need to manage emergencies that don't involve people being broken.
Right. Yeah. No, and there's a certain separation of time and a screen, I feel like, in some of these videos, but if you're actually dealing with it in the real world, I feel like that would be a very different experience.
The internet.
It's creating, it's doing something to us. I don't know what, but it's changing people.
A lot. It's doing a lot to us. So Hanlon thinks about his victim and how he doesn't care if it's man, woman, or child, but in this case, it's a man who's extremely nondescript and difficult to put any kind of identity to, and he lays out a basic tale of murder for theft, knowing that it will put off everyone except the person who sent the man, and then he continues on his mission to get to Lady Cheyenne's house.
And I feel like, especially when these books were written, that was a real way to differentiate between anti-heroes and real bad guys, right? Anti-heroes always never killed women or children. Sure, bad guys, fine, but like if you're a real bad guy, you kill women and children. And I feel like that's what Jordan's trying to say here, is this is a real bad guy.
We learn in this chapter that he killed a woman who was pregnant.
Right.
With his child, no less. So yeah, he has no moral line that he won't cross. He has no honor code. He has no line in the sand. He's just bad guy.
That's shockingly common. Pregnant women have more to fear from the men who got them pregnant than anybody else.
That's
homicide is the number one cause of death for pregnant women.
Yep.
Yeah, that is very true. But in fantasy, it's rare, so therefore it's the mark of a definitely bad guy.
I mean, I think in the real world, it's also a mark of a bad guy, right? Like, no one's gonna...
Yeah. It's supposed to be like, ooh, he's so bad, instead of being like, no, a fuck ton of people do that. Like, that's normal people that you interact with are that kind of bad.
think it's supposed to be in fantasy. It's a rarity that pregnant women are murdered, but
exactly. It's supposed to be like a ooh instead of being like, well, this is a normal hazard. But like, this is also a world in which sex work doesn't exist, apparently. So yeah, no.
Matt would beg to differ.
Well, there's just that.
I think women are masters of their own sex work in this world. I think it's a little different, but yeah, I don't know. They call the Goodnight's Ride or whatever it is in Lugard is referred to as a stew, which is an old-timey word for a brothel.
I'd be willing to bet there are brothels. Like the inn seems to be a central hub in this world, and I would imagine that there are brothels in those inns, and there's some places where the barmaids are. Yeah, no, it's absolutely ridiculous that Jordan tried to say in an interview that sex work doesn't exist in his world, because it literally does. He literally wrote it in there. It's like more obvious than the gay characters. Like Jordan lies. That's the other thing that Harriet said that I trust. Jordan lied all the time to people who were interviewing him about his books.
Which, it's hard to blame him for, but I don't know. I feel like he might have meant that sex workers are independent contractors in the Wheel of Time, and that there's no such, there's no sex trafficking or pimps or anything. Like women are masters of their own bodies, stuff like that. That was more his idea, is that sex work was more...
Still unrealistic, but I like it.
Unrealistic, but more idealized. So... Yeah,
no, okay. That's good.
I guess you could say, there's this power imbalance, right? Because anyone could be an Aes Sedai woman, so you wouldn't, all those stories of like, don't piss off a strange woman because you don't know if she's going to be Aes Sedai, right? Maybe it's a little safer for women because of that, because there's this power imbalance, the one power, right? And that brings back into balance some of the power imbalance that physical strength pulls out of balance, right? So... maybe that's what he's trying to say, that it's a little safer in this world because of that, but it doesn't seem like he writes that into the actual books and the way people behave. So, yeah.
But yeah, that might have been what he was trying to go for.
I like the backwards compliment on that one. He tried. And he failed miserably.
Yeah, for more of that, come over to the Hot Nuance Book Club, where we literally talk about fantasy brothels and fantasy periods and all that kind of stuff that comes up in the Hot Nuance Book Club. Shameless plug.
Hell yeah. So speaking of disgusting, we have another one of RJ basically exploring the rape or threats of rape being used as a way to punish, quote unquote, bad women, which is just really horrible.
This is just regular, repeated, routine rape is what that is.
Yeah. Particularly, like, it seems like something that a woman is inflicting on other women, with Lady Choedan putting Thalion through this. And it was supposed to be, I think in the last book, like, Hanlon was supposed to be part of Thalion's punishment, and like he was smart enough not to actually, just to pretend, because he figured she might be able to channel again one day and he didn't want to piss her off. But somehow Lady Choedan was aware of it, or found out that, like, they were just pretending, and so ended up inflicting the big stable guy or whatever, her muscle man, on her. And yeah, that's just gross and horrible for all kinds of reasons. I really hate that he does that.
Yeah. Having sexual assault as a punishment at all is gross, and then to have it only inflicted on women is just like extra gross.
Yeah, having it just be a punishment for bad women, because it seems like it's like almost never happens. Like it's rare that it happens to women in this book unless they're bad.
And they don't appear to be traumatized by it either. They're just like, well, it's just another punishment, like being beaten or locked in a box or made to eat worms. It's not traumatizing for bad people. Bad people just take it as their due for being bad people and inflict it on others without a second thought.
That reminds me a lot of these horror movies where it's like, by accepting sex, you're a bad person. So you've accepted the evil into you, so you deserve to be raped. Like there's a certain amount of like, like why do the people who have sex always get killed first in the horror movies, right?
TC Traveler says Morghese is an exception, and I think the only reason that he made her an exception is because he felt like believing that Valda had raped and murdered her was absolutely the only thing that would make Galad challenge and kill him, and that there would literally be no other motivation that would make Galad and the person that he was do that. because I don't think he would have done that to her otherwise.
And Ravine was just causing damage because Ravine causes damage. So
I love that both brothers flipped out about their mother's death and accused the wrong person when she was still alive. And like Gawain ruined his relationship over it, and Galad like killed the head of the White Cloaks over it. And she's like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm over here just chilling with Perrin."
Well, it's not like Valda didn't deserve it.
No,
so.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, and Gawain is an idiot, so yeah. Brain damaged.
But yeah, it's and then we have another name fuckery that again points to RJ for using not S as the name, but we've got Marilyn and Morellin in one paragraph.
I know.
Jordan!
I was like, what the fuck?
Jordan. God.
And there's no excuse for it, because he knew that Marilyn was going to be part of that whole little crew right there, and there's nowhere else that the big guy is. So why the fuck didn't you name him something like Bob or Steve?
Right. Ridiculous.
I do not know where Marilyn is. She went out before sunset. Merlin is in the stables with his pipe.
Unnecessary.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Nobody needed that.
No.
They're literally just a couple of vowels off of each other. M-A-M-U-R-I-R-E. Otherwise, totally the same.
L-L-I-N.
Yep.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yep.
Ugh.
I totally noted that last night and was like, what the actual fuck?
Because it's not like it's a short little name that he like, oh, it was one letter off of. These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 letter names that are almost identical.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just unnecessary.
Unnecessary.
So yeah, Marilyn Gamalfin is somewhere out and about. I don't think that matters. I don't think it does. It means anything. She's just out and about.
And she's one of the original 13 Black Friend, Dark Friend Aes Sedai that we have been chasing forever.
Yeah.
The one who loves cats.
Yep.
Since book 3?
2.
Book 3.
3.
3, okay.
Yeah. The second time that they get drug out of the tower.
Right.
Also, I just, for anyone who didn't know that a heated egg milk is a thing, I Googled that for all of us who didn't know that that was a thing. It is a thing.
Oh, thank you.
A heated egg milk is an Asian drink. I found a recipe for it. You heat up milk and then you mix an egg into it, and there's like sugar and cinnamon, and it's a drink.
It actually sounds like it might be really tasty if you weren't super lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be sort of a nightmare for lactose intolerant people, but it's a thing. I thought it was just Jordan pulling random words together, and no, it's a thing.
Oh, yeah, like eggnog. That makes sense.
Yeah, not unlike eggnog, but not eggnog.
I love eggnog.
And so then we've got a couple of visitors that get named, and I don't think any of them we can ever figure out who they are. It's just the broad political implications of who they represent that matters.
There's just dark friends. There's just dark friends in the city and dark friends in the palace. Maybe one of them has some effect on the gate opening, the way gate opening during the last battle. We can headcanon that they're the people who do that betrayal. I don't know. That's the best I could come up with.
Yeah, I couldn't find any clues because she kills the one guy. The one guy that went up that gets described in most detail is dead.
Yeah.
And then the other two guys that get described are described mainly in terms of the fact that Cheyenne is meeting with people from the opposition to Elayne, which is like shock Pikachu face, right? Like It's not really stunning.
Yeah, I think that it's probably a setup for something that Jordan had planned on doing and then just wasn't able to write and possibly didn't have any notes for, so Brandon couldn't do anything with it.
That seems likely, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Jordan had so much of this in his head that he was just trying to get down on the page that like he never really... it never really went anywhere because it was too complex and too in his head.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the later books, there's a lot of small little bits like that where it's sort of like that he planned this to go somewhere, or that there was going to be some small little tie-in, and it just isn't there. And Brandon couldn't have known what to do with it, or lost it in the mix of trying to figure out everything and tuck everything away. So,
and we get another reminder of how bad of a guy Hanlon is with how he thinks about Elayne, because he thought that she was supposed to get crowned, but maybe she's supposed to die before she gets crowned. He's not sure. And then Falion is like, now that I've answered some of your questions, you need to answer some of my questions. And what she wants to know about is the dynamics between all of the different channelers, which he just thinks is irrelevant entirely. It doesn't seem to come to much for her, but she's attempting to figure out what's going on there. I'm assuming she's trying to figure out which one of them is a dark friend, but I'm not sure.
I think so. I don't know that she knows that Cariana is there, or Karine, or whatever.
Right.
But I'm not exactly sure. I don't know if it's like what they're exchanging is as important as just the fact that they have a deal for how they exchange information, and that he's laying that out. And then it's as she's going to take him up, he learns that the shield is no longer on her, that she has access to the one power again, and that even with that, she's still having, disgusting punishments inflicted upon her because Elayne is also an asshole of, tremendous degree, a Daved Hanlon level asshole, and but one who's we never get inside her head.
But don't forget, this is all coming from Moradin, right? Like, Moradin is the one who's giving all these orders. He's the one who's, like, basically saying punish her, right? He's the one who's who's put the shield on the Aes Sedai in the first place.
He left to Elayne's discretion about how that would go about. Like, he delegated that task, and Elayne's just a shit.
Yes.
And I think part of it is that she wanted to be an Aes Sedai and couldn't, and so being able to be shitty to Aes Sedai is fun for her.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely have some of that bitterness coming off of her.
Yeah, she's a character we don't ever get in her head, I'm pretty sure, which is kind of a shame because it would have been interesting, even if he only gave us a couple of paragraphs from her point of view. It would have been super illuminating.
Winter's Heart, Chapter 10.
We do?
Yeah.
Oh, is that when we get her whole backstory? I think it is. She thinks about how she stole money from one family and a name from another family.
Oh, awesome.
But another one would be nice. More than one would have been real cool. One where we actually get her plans coming to fruition, or gloating, or trying to scramble for something would have been fun.
Especially because she is such like a long-term bad guy, right? She's the lady in the barn who tries to stab Matt and Rand
from the road trip.
From the road trip and Eye of the World, right? Like, it's amazing that she is still in all of this, and yet we only get that one little POV. That kind of ties it all together. I almost think she initially wrote two different characters and was like, wait, I can just make that character. Just have her change her name at some point, right? Like, why not?
Yeah.
Potentially.
And as far as we know, she's still at large, right? She escaped Camelin. She was rescued by Hanlon, which, again, this goes back to that jock guy we were talking about earlier, right? Like, he's the one who helped free her from the dungeon, and she escaped, and, as far as we know, she's teaming up with Lanfear. Post last battle.
Well, Lanfear's dead.
Oh, right. So. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I forgot. My bad. I had a dream where she was still alive. I don't know. Like, someone announced that she was still alive. Yeah. Oof. Okay. Terrifying.
So it seems like the whole point of this POV is that Hanlon is kind of thinking to himself about the fact that, he's an obedient dark friend, except that he's going to save his skin above all else. So, if it means that he has to run from the city, then he will, though it will mean he has to look over his shoulder for the rest of his life, and that he feels like this situation with Elayne is starting to look like it's potentially really sketchy. After Phelan used the power on him, he's determined that, she's going to die. He's decided that he needs to kill Lady Elayne, and he's determined at the end that he's got to kill Marilyn too whenever she comes back. So he's starting to cross people off the list of he's planning on all of them dying, and then he's going to peace out at some point. And so it's like ends are tying up, even if it's just in his head, just to kind of set up some manner of tying up this shit. Whether, it's not going to tie up the way he plans on it, but it's going to get tied up.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's sort of like you do meet some dark friends who seem to put the shadow above all, but mostly it's a matter of self-preservation. And he's definitely the ultimate one of those. It's all about him and being able to come out on top And if it means he's got to run for it for the rest of his life, he will, but he definitely is not willing to sacrifice himself for the shadow.
Yeah. When we get his little backstory about the woman that he killed, and Cheyenne reveals that the shadow knows about the rock, and he's like, how did they know that I used a rock to kill this woman? I'm assuming that's because a raven must have been watching, because he was like already marked by the shadow as like a person to keep an eye on and maybe promote up the ranks at some point, even when he was a young man. This is the only way that anyone could know about the rock, right? Is if ravens had been watching him.
It seems like, yeah, unless somebody else was watching him. To me, it seems not particularly realistic that anybody would know about it, but...
Right, so it's got to be like there were ravens watching him and like reporting, and like Cheyenne got given this information by the shadow to be able to have a little bit more of a hold on him.
Nentok thinks dreams.
Oh, I like that Moradin is watching his dreams and fed that information to Cheyenne as a tool to use over him.
Oh, I like that he has like occasional like recurring nightmare dream flashes, and Moradin was able to rummage around and note that, and that works as well. That works too. I like that too.
One thing I noticed about Cheyenne, she also has a small dagger capped with a fire drop on the pommel. She has a ruby-hilted
dagger. Yes, I noticed
just like the
that.
one Matt tried to kill her with, almost.
Well, she saw it. Yep. I mean, she's got like maybe a little bit of like, ooh, I like the fashion on that thing.
Maybe there's a little bit of like, oh, that's Matt that got away. I remember him. Like, that was a big threat. She's
carrying it as like a reminder, the one that got away. Also, I wanted to point out that the story about Cottrell Mosinane or whatever, an ironmonger's daughter from Mayroan, I looked up Mayroan in the wiki, and it is referenced as both the potential origin point of Alver and Chelvannon. It's a town on the border right between Kyrian and Andor. So Jordan liked to use that town for his random peasant number 7 sort of character template.
What, you think Oliver might be Daved Hanlon's bastard child?
No, I'm just saying he has multiple characters coming from that town. Like, he just thought we wouldn't notice or something.
I mean, it's a good-sized town. Like, when we see it, it's like Matt's first POV in Lord of Chaos, and it's a good-sized town that they're in, where they're waiting for the order to start marching down to Ilion, checking all the inns, and it's got a bunch of them.
Sorry, and Mayroan's the place on the opposite side of Erangel, which is the big town that we hear about all the time.
Ah.
I think so.
Okay.
I thought Jareen was opposite Erangel, and that was a little town. But I could be wrong.
I'm just reading the wiki, so the wiki could be wrong as well. I trust you over the wiki, frankly.
Don't trust me over the wiki. There are hardcore nerds who nerd way harder than I do.
For the geography, I would trust the wiki. I have no idea. It would make sense to me that there's 2 big towns on either side of the river at the border. That would make more sense to me than one big town and one little town.
Yeah.
It just sounds like all the ships stop at Erangel and nobody bothers stopping on the Mayroan side of things.
Right, because it's civil war on that side.
Right.
That's a fairly recent thing. So yeah, it's a big town, and that's where Matt picks up Oliver. And according to the wiki, it's also the ostensible origin point for Chelvannon. But it's a city of sort of mixed Andoran and Kyrian and culture and heritage, and so I guess it's not too surprising. But yeah, Daved Hanlon did a murder of a pregnant woman in that town as well. Well, at least that's where she was from. I'm assuming that that's also where the crime occurred.
Oh, what a charmer.
Yeah, anyway, we don't need to keep dwelling on that. Cheyenne asks if he can manage to get some of the Shanchan women to be escaped, to be able to escape. He's like, no. Then she asks about the arsons, confirming what we have already been saying, that the arsons are in fact being managed by him at her direction. And he says, no, I can't do anything more with that. And then he picks up the wine without meaning to drink, but then drinks because he's shocked. And then he's all scared that he's going to be poisoned because the other guy died of poison. But then he talks himself down. He's like, nah, surely there's no more poison in the cup. And it's just a really, like, he's such a badass, but also he's, like, totally not got control of himself. So it's kind of comical. Like, I almost feel like one of those, like, comedy soundtracks should be running under the whole, like, sequence with the wine, because he just, like, continually, like, overdoes what he thought he was going to do.
Well, he's such a misogynist, too. And so being in this position where it's like this woman is in power over him and also seems like she's 2 steps ahead of him kind of throws him for a loop. And I think Jordan writes him in that place really well, because he's not used to being in that kind of a situation. And it's nice to see him that way because he's such an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he gets presented as being infinitely competent, and it's fun to see him being clearly 2 steps behind someone who he looks down on. That is satisfying, even if that person is also the worst. It works.
Oh, I love Cheyenne. I think she's like one of the more competent Dark friends. I really like the way she's able to, like...
She survives from book 1 to after the end of the series. Very competent Dark friend.
and gives Matt all sorts of trouble, and Elayne all sorts of trouble.
And she will rise up to trouble them in the future. She's going to be one of the first mob bosses of the 4th Age, for sure.
So I'm saying her and maybe, I guess, who else survives? Mogedion, right?
Mogedion gets collared.
Yeah, but hey, you know, maybe Cheyenne Freezer, right? She finds out about the capture.
No, Mogedion and Elida end up as cellmates. Can you imagine? But yeah, no, she's really well written and awesome, and it's fun to see her being the one who is taking down Hanlon at the end of this scene, because Hanlon is way more one-dimensional. He's way less complex. He's way less competent. It's fun to see her just casually being like, what, like it's hard in terms of dealing with it.
Right. I love his, like, so you sleeping with Elayne yet? He's like, almost. And she's like, yeah, I suppose she's a little tougher than your normal. Just laughing at him like, you're not gonna get to sleep with her. You're screwed. You definitely promised something you couldn't deliver. She's a queen. You have nothing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Nentalk the Mind Taker in chat. Screw Lanfear. Hail Cheyenne. Absolutely. Absolutely correct.
Yeah, definitely. Lanfear wastes the power she has. Cheyenne does more than she possibly should be able to with the power she has.
And then she'll go to the Finn and be like, hey, do you have some spare power lying around? And they'll be like, you know, we did take this power from Lanfear, and we actually aren't using it. We took the stuff from Morin, and we are using that. But this Lanfear stuff is gathering dust. So you know what? Here you go.
Luke tried to go to the Dark One to get the ability to channel, and he said he couldn't do that.
Wrong pitch.
But the Fox
gotta go to
and
the
Finn, yep, I bet they could do it. I bet they could grant that power. They can certainly take it away.
If they can take it away, they can give it.
Exactly.
Equilibrium.
Plus, it fits the, like, 3 wishes thing, right? I want to learn. I want to be able to channel. Poof, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess, Seth, do you want to read us out?
Sure. I just want to talk about this. How would you like to see Caemlyn looted? Do you think she's referring to the invasion plan of the Trollocs, or is this something else that she's talking about here?
I assumed it was the invasion.
I think that it's basically what happens in the next book, because the mercenaries open the gates. The reason that Aramilla is able to get in, and the reason that they catch her in basically a vice, because Elayne has been kidnapped, and so they have soldiers on the outside that come around to the gate, and so they get her sandwiched. So she's got the person up there with the Sarand thing on their glove, and then somebody who has the Marn symbol as well. So presumably she's talking to people to get them to agree to open the gates or whatever, to at some point get somebody to betray whatever inside so that they can have the gates open from the inside and let Aramilla's people in.
I think you're actually right. I retract my former what Morgan said.
What Morgan said. Yep. That's pretty.
I don't know why I bothered answering first. That was dumb of me.
Well, you know, it's nice to get something wrong every once in a while, and they're going to be corrected. All right. Well, yeah. I guess I'll read us out. Suddenly, she turned around, and he blinked as she casually slipped her dagger back into its sheath. He had never seen her draw the bloody thing. He took a swallow of wine without thinking and almost choked when he realized what he had done. "How would you like to see Camelin looted?" she asked. "Well enough, if I have good company at my back and a clear path to the gates." The wine had to be safe. 2 cups meant she had drunk 2, and if he had picked up the dead man's, there could not be enough poison left in it to sicken a mouse. "Is that what you want? I follow orders as well as the next man." He did when he seemed likely to survive them, or when they came from the Chosen. As well die for a fool as disobey the Chosen. But sometimes it helps to know more than go there and do that. If you told me what you're after here in Camelin, I might be able to help you reach it faster. Of course, she smiled a toothy smile, while her eyes stayed as flat as brown stones. But first, tell me why there is fresh blood on your gauntlet. He smiled back. "A footpad who got unlucky, my lady. Maybe she had sent the man and maybe not, but he added her throat to the list of those he intended to slit. And you might as well add Marilyn Gamalfin too. After all, a lone survivor was the only one who could tell the tale of what had happened."
I'm digging how you're going for genre voices instead of character voices.
It's kind of fun. I'm mixing it up a little bit because
that's fun.
Sometimes the character voices get really boring and hard. Otherwise, I'm just imitating Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, right? Like that's sort of now I'm imitating other voices I've heard out there. So it was hard because I wanted to like do the much more of it didn't have the language that's used in those films. Right. So it was a little hard to maintain the voice on that one because it wasn't like the gumshoe vocabulary. And I also haven't practiced at all. So, you know.
So when are we getting into audiobook production again?
Hey, someone hand me a book and I'll produce it. There was a book I wanted to listen to the audiobook of. It was called The Last Dragon Lord. It was definitely a book I read like in the 80s or 90s. Not the greatest book in the world, but I was like, I have nostalgia for it. I want to go listen to the audiobook. And there's not one. And I was like, we should like write to the author. And like I looked her up and she's a relatively like, she kind of got semi big in the 90s and then never had another big hit. And so like she's written like a trilogy, but they've never been made into audiobooks. And I was like, we should just offer to do that.
Fox and Raven Media can do all kinds of media.
Yeah.
All kinds of media. So, is a very, very broad umbrella.
But I think she's like probably signed contracts with Dell or whatever. So who knows if we'd be able to legally do any of that kind of stuff. But so I'll have to.
I like the ambition.
The Last Dragon Lord.
Well, thank you so much, Morgan, for joining us for these chapters. Thank you for requesting it and bringing your usual excellent insights. I'm sure the audience will very much appreciate not having to listen to Seth and I quite as much for this one.
Well, always glad to come in, especially when there's a novel point of view.
And you do so well on those politics that I really love getting your insight onto that because you just keep it all in your head way better than I ever could.
That part, I mean, without the self-deprecating bullshit that I need to break myself of. Yeah, thank you for making the politics actually hold together in a way that my brain is not good at.
I try. I don't know. I don't feel particularly like put together right now, so I've got like a lot of like life is draining sometimes, and it feels like your head doesn't work as well as it used to. So
we're really, really grateful you were able to come share some of your brain with us.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm happy to learn my brain out.
Okay, so before we turned recording on, we were talking about mirrors and how when you look in a mirror and see something flipped, that's a very personal experience. And on TikTok, when that flipping happens, it's annoying because reasons. And then Seth said something about mirrors that just broke my brain. So we turned recording on. So Seth, try that again.
Okay, so recordings don't flip things horizontally. they flip things from front to back. And that makes us see things as flipped horizontally, right? So think of it this way, right? When a word is flipped front to back, or is you look at a word horizontally, it looks backwards to us, right?
Right.
If that was flipping it across the x-axis, when you turned that 90 degrees, the word wouldn't be backwards anymore. But that's not how it works. It still remains flipped. The flip actually happens from front to back, right? Because the mirror is facing, the person in the mirror is facing towards you, right? If you're facing south, the person in the mirror is facing north.
But it's a two-dimensional image, so there is no front or back, right?
No, of course there's a front and a back, right? There's towards the mirror and there's away from the mirror. And you can construct the mirror image as this three-dimensional thing that exists inside the mirror.
It hurts my brain. This is one of those things I need like a diagram for.
And here, Holger is saying this in the chat. The reason why we see it as flipping horizontally is because we need to turn around to see it after flipping. And people turn in the horizontal plane, not vertically.
I'm
right,
trying so hard.
It's very difficult. There's videos out there that help show this better. Here, I'll throw a link into the chat that has a science girl who's a fairly popular YouTube person doing this experiment, and she shows you with lettering and sort of explains how it works better than I can. Because it's just a really hard concept to grasp until you see it physically, and then you're like, oh, we perceive that as horizontal flipping because we have to turn around to see that word backwards. But the word itself doesn't change.
I feel like at a certain level this makes sense because I've spent a lot of time staring at backwards text in mirrors. So like fundamentally, like this is answering like how that experience works, but also like my rational, logical word brain is shorting out. All of the links that Seth is dropping in chat will be in the episode description.
So really just that one video is the one that's... I've seen
Physics Girl. Yeah, Physics Girl is good at explaining things.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm definitely going to need like a picture.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's for further study at a later date.
So one thing I've fallen in love with is lactose-free milk. It's actual milk that they add the enzyme lactase to, and it breaks down the lactose. So there's no lactose in it, but it's real milk. It's just...
The lactose has been digested for you. Yeah. So instead of like...
I've had it.
Instead of taking those like lactase pills, they put it in the milk directly. And that's all I ever drink because I love milk. And that's real milk.
Nice.
It's a little bit sweeter because the lactase breaks down. Lactose is a sugar, complex sugar, and it breaks down into two simple sugars. So you get a little more sweetness because there's more sugar in it.
Better living through chemistry.
Yeah.
I love it. Food science is so cool.
And my lactose intolerance isn't that bad. I'm not like a crazy. It's just like if I drink a gallon of milk, I'll be in pain.
And milk is life, so...
I'm so addicted to it. I don't, I try and cut it out, but like I love cereal with milk. I love milk in my coffee. I cook with it all the time if I'm baking anything or if I'm making a cream sauce. It's so hard to cut it out of your life. And I do use, we have oat milk that I do actually love oat milk as a replacement. I found it to be really good in a lot of the cooking I do and a lot of the baking I do. And it foams pretty well as well if you heat it up. So it works as a decent like coffee creamer as well. And I like the flavor more than some of the other artificial ones. And I think it's better for the environment. So this is my little like oat milk. Try it. It's not bad.
Oat milk is pretty good. It makes some really good ice cream. There's an oat milk ice cream that's like an apple crumble type, and it's amazing. So highly recommend.
Nice.
Okay. Anyway, Daved Hanlon, nasty.
Yeah, and then we've got...
Sorry.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?